Don't you find it insufficient as an art form?
Every now and again, people just want to have a good time.
Good time. A hotel in Brooklyn off of Perkins Street. He said, your brother plays pain better than anyone. Benny just played what he knew.
Hi everyone, I am finally back with another conspiracy theory video. I was over on my main channel this past week posting Vlogtober videos. Thank you to everyone who went over there and checked them out. And also thank you to everyone that tuned into my live stream that I did talking about the Michael Jackson biopic and a few other Michael Jackson related news things. So disclaimer before we begin, I just want to say that I am not in any way trying to compare this character in the series, Teddy Perkins, to Michael Jackson because of his physical appearance. It doesn't have to do with appearance, and it more so has to do with their upbringing, especially their childhoods. There are certain things that the Teddy Perkins character we're going to be talking about today reveals in the Atlanta show that does show some comparison with Michael Jackson. Not even really just Michael Jackson, but child stars in general. But if you don't know about the show Atlanta, I had heard of it, but I had never actually sat and watched it. As I'm filming this, I've only seen this particular episode that we're talking about today with Teddy Perkins, played by Donald Glover. So a little bit about the Atlanta series. It is a comedy drama series by Donald Glover, and it follows college dropout and music manager Ernest Earn Marks, which is played by Donald Glover, and then rapper Alfred Paperboy Miles, who is played by Brian Tyree Henry, as they navigate a strange and apparently otherworldly Atlanta hip-hop scene. This episode, from what I've seen, it's one of the more unsettling ones. I kept seeing clips of it on TikTok and I was just like, what is this about? What is this series about? It seems like from what I looked into, a lot of the other episodes are different than this particular one about Teddy Perkins, but this one just looked so weird, I had to know. And I think it's maybe a 30-minute episode. It's not that long. I am going to be spoiling this episode. So if you don't want to be spoiled and you want to watch it first and then come back. But if you've seen it or you don't really care to be spoiled, here is a summary of the show. The Teddy Perkins episode is the 6th episode of the 2nd season of the American comedy drama television series Atlanta. This episode features series regular Darius Epps, who visits a mansion to pick up a free piano. He encounters a strange man named Teddy Perkins. Against the phone advice of Alfred, Darius continues his attempt to leave with the piano and discovers that Perkins intends to turn the mansion into a museum. So the reason Darius actually ended up there is because he answered a message board advertisement for a valuable piano owned by a famous musician named Benny Hope. This leads him to a mansion owned by a pale man with a mask-like face named Theodore Teddy Perkins, who of course is played by Donald. Teddy exhibits strange and unsettling behavior during their conversations. He claims that Benny is his brother, whom he watches over. Teddy will not let Darius meet Benny as he uses a wheelchair and has a skin condition that makes him extremely photosensitive. After exploring some of the mansion, Darius calls Alfred, his friend, and he actually urges him to get out of there and not mess with it. But Darius hypothesizes that the man he's been dealing with is actually Benny and uses the persona of Teddy to cope with his dwindling career and physical condition. But we're going to find out that Benny actually does exist. So Teddy then shows Darius the mansion's gift shop and informs him that he's turning the mansion into a museum and historical site. Teddy also claims that he and Benny were physically ABUSED'd by their father in his desire to make the two of them musical prodigies. So this is where it gets into, we can see how this relates to Michael Jackson and really just child stars in general, but especially the fact that he mentions his father not being so kind to them and harming them. Automatically I was like, oh, this is why people are making this comparison. Aside from some people who are just being nasty and saying he looks like Michael Jackson. This is obviously done with a lot of prosthetics. you couldn't even tell that this was Donald. I mean, it's so over exaggerated, so over the top. And then you have this picture of Michael, who obviously, yes, he's had surgery, but they're not the same. So really the thing that stood out to me was obviously mentioning the ABUSE by his father. Darius is eventually granted the piano and attempts to leave with the elevator that they have in the home, which they do have an elevator. So if Teddy Perkins' brother is in fact alive, because throughout this, Darius is, you know, wondering if Teddy's just kind of fallen off his rocker and that Benny, his brother, has either passed away or is made up and just as a way to cope with his dwindling success. But then there is an elevator that does help if you are in a wheelchair, you know, you can't go up and down the stairs, things like that. So it takes him to the basement, and this is where he actually encounters Benny in a wheelchair. He has dark sunglasses on and heavy bandages, but at the moment he's not positive that it's Benny because Benny is completely covered, but he knows that someone is in the basement at this point in a wheelchair. So Benny, unable to speak due to the bandages covering his face, warns Darius by writing on a small chalkboard that Teddy will KILL us both, and that he should get a GUN located in the attic. Darius, believing that Benny is actually Teddy in a disguise, ignores this and attempts to leave with the piano immediately. Reaching the porch, he discovers that Teddy is blocking the loading bay of Darius's rental truck with his car. Okay, this part just gave me chills. I know it's a very subtle thing, it's not anything too crazy, but the car being blocked, I was just like, oh my. So that's blocked. So then Darius knows he has to go back in the house and find Teddy and tell him to move his car. At this point, Darius is freaked out, which, like, I'm just saying, you've talked to your friend on the phone, your first sense, your first odd feeling is usually correct. You should listen to it, your intuition, you should listen. So he didn't do that. Then he finds a random dude covered in bandages in a wheelchair in the basement. Hello? I mean, I would have been booking it at that point. Forget the piano, I do not care, get me out of here. Well, then his car is blocked, his moving truck is blocked. So then he has to go in and talk to Teddy again. So he actually brings a wrought iron fireplace poker, you know, to stir the fire to get it going again. So then he finds Teddy upstairs and he hears a light sound that sounds kind of like a piano playing. And that's where he discovers Teddy sitting in a chair watching home movies of their abusive father teaching Benny how to play the piano. Darius ends up asking if he can use the restroom. And Teddy mentions that the bathroom is up the stairs further near the attic before revealing a large SHOTGUN. And then Teddy holds Darius at GUN point. And he states that Darius will be his sacrifice. He marches Darius down to the foyer and forces him to handcuff himself and reveals his plan to KILL Darius and stage the scene like a home invasion by an obsessed fan in order to increase interest in his planned museum. Yikes. As Teddy sets down the GUN, Darius unsuccessfully attempts to dissuade Teddy from following through with his plan by sympathizing with his past, revealing that he too had a not so great father.
But your dad should have said sorry. I went through daddy myself.
But despite the effort, Teddy prepares to go ahead with the plan, but then the elevator door just opens out of nowhere. To both men's surprise, the injured Benny exits the elevator and enters the room, revealing that Teddy was telling the truth about Benny. So now it is official. Benny is a real person, he is his brother, and he is in fact alive.
Benny, you're alive!
Benny picks up Teddy's discarded GUN as Teddy exclaims, "Benny, you're alive." And then as Benny lifts the GUN, a wound can be seen on his abdomen, implying that Teddy may have attempted to KILL his brother earlier, and that his ultimate plan was to frame Darius for the unaliving of his own brother. Benny then SHOTS's Teddy, and he ends up passing away. Before using the fireplace poker he takes from Darius to pull the GUN trigger, and that ultimately takes his own life. The police arrive, they get rid of the bodies and the piano as scene evidence, and then Darius drives away empty-handed in his U-Haul truck. So that's obviously a lot. It's very unsettling, but I love shows and movies that are more unsettling rather than a lot of stuff like jumping out or gore or things like that. I like the I feel unsettled, I feel like something isn't right kind of vibe. So now we're gonna get into how does this compare with Michael Jackson? And of course, I went to Reddit to see what people were talking about after I watched the show. Here's what people had to say on Reddit. It says, he looks and shares some similarities to Michael Jackson. For those who've seen the episode or clips, what do you think of it? I've seen the episode and it's not really just based on MJ, though I could definitely see why someone would see that, especially since they edit, this is pretty crazy. In one part where they pan around at Teddy Perkins' room, there is a part where they edit a younger Teddy Perkins into a Michael Jackson picture, and it's Michael Chuck Berry. So that's very telling. I mean, why would they do that? Though later in the episode, they make it pretty clear through dialogue that MJ and Joe Jackson existed in this universe. They're actually in the same universe.
I want this wing of the museum to be dedicated to great fathers. My father, Joe Jackson.
With their very abusive father-son relationship being a model for Teddy. In a separate conversation between a few characters, they explicitly avoid referencing Michael when talking about Teddy's skin condition and subsequent plastic surgery, with Teddy being more compared to Sammy Sosa. This is Sammy Sosa. That being said, he's not really based on Michael, as silly as it sounds. It is a bit of a mix of people. Aside from MJ, his character takes things from Marvin Gaye, again, Sammy Sosa, the Winter Brothers, Howard Hughes, and the various conservators of musicians' estate. The biggest illusion that this character paints is to the character Baby Jane Hudson from Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. While not entirely based on Michael, it is definitely the main inspiration, and I agree, Teddy isn't Michael. That Joe Jackson part definitely lets us know that. It makes me believe that in the reality, Michael never went through his surgery or vitiligo situation, but it was instead Teddy who went through it. It's about how parents push their kids over the limits, wanting them to be good at something or successful for their own benefit, and how it affects the kids' mental health as they grow older. That's very true. Like how Michael Jackson was done by his family. Their father was really putting a lot of pressure on them just so they could be a famous pianist.
He practiced us with a belt in his hand. If you miss a step, expect to be, he would tear you up if you missed. I got it a lot of times.
But you were only a child.
I know.
You were producing successful records.
I know. He said, I'm not Daddy, I'm Joseph to you. And I totally forgive him for all of it. So when people say the abuse, that's not true.
This is my father. He's the reason for all of this. When me and Benny were children, he instituted a very rigorous training method. Meant physical punishment. Because of him, we have all of this. We were a sacrifice. Most people wouldn't understand.
Are you not mad at your dad?
Of course not. My father used to say, great things come from great pain.
And this person just kind of explains the episode more that Benny was the more talented brother and he led a prominent life of fame and fortune until he became disabled by his rare skin condition. And then Teddy became his brother's support after he failed to become a successful musician. Due to being stunted both physically and creatively, Benny became a tremendous burden on Teddy's life. On the other hand, Teddy had no source of income aside from his brother's wealth and name. And at this point, it's like Benny, really, in this moment, with the fact that Benny was, basically being hidden away, he was the most successful. This is when I'm like, out of the entirety of it, I'm seeing it more with Benny rather than Teddy, because Teddy is basically using his brother's income, using his brother's fame for his own benefit, but he also doesn't really want to take care of his brother and doesn't want to deal with it, so his brother's in a basement in a wheelchair. Like, this is a part where I think, okay, in this moment, Benny is really reminding me of Michael rather than Teddy. So tired of taking care of his brother and leading a life in the shadows, Teddy decided to finally gain a life of his own at the cost of his brother's prior fame. He went about this by baiting a Benny Hope fanatic to his home before framing that person for unaliving his brother, which, crazy plan, that's wild, but he really was about to, I mean, if Benny wouldn't have, it could have went that way for sure. Let's see, everything was going well for Teddy until Benny recomposed himself from being attacked and saved Darius by unaliving Teddy. All in all, the episode is about a black man trying to be successful by diminishing his brother's life and dying by that his brother's hands for just trying. Teddy Perkins carrying the overall theme of Robin season, Crabs in a Barrel, extremely well because it shows how people gain success and stop others from being successful by stepping on the backs of others by putting those above then down. Another major topic of the episode is the child ABUSE. In the media, both Benny and Teddy were child musicians who were harshly trained to be successful. The entire premise recalls the childhoods of Marvin Gaye, the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson to be more specific, the Venus Sisters, and other childhood stars who have been permanently damaged by the industry. It also highlights how it affects parent-child relations. Teddy idolized his father like Tiger Woods and Charlie Sheen, and how they looked up to their fathers. Benny used the ABUSE as motivation for his music. As noted by Teddy's words, "No one could play pain more like your brother. Benny only played what he knew." On the other hand, Teddy, not knowing anything else, stubbornly believed that his father's ABUSE made him a better man, which he does say that in the show. That same pain at the end of it all ended their lives, and they took it to their graves, which was why Darius couldn't take the piano, the symbolic source of Teddy and Benny's ABUSE, with him. That's pretty intense. So that was obviously a lot. Honestly, my opinion of this conspiracy theory, I think after rereading some parts of this series through Reddit users and also the synopsis of the show on Wikipedia and just the clips and little, like, I guess you could call them Easter egg, the picture where they edited Teddy Perkins next to Chuck Berry instead of Michael Jackson and Chuck Berry. I mean, that's kind of telling, but also they did address Michael Jackson and Joe Jackson in this Atlanta series, so they do exist in this universe. And honestly, the way Barry handled things and was treated reminds me more of Michael than Teddy Perkins, in my opinion. But I definitely could see it with Teddy Perkins a little bit as well. So y'all let me know what you think. I highly recommend checking out this episode because even if it's not a direct comparison to Michael Jackson or Michael Jackson's life, it is still really freaky to watch. Also, you guys let me know if you want me to talk about the Teddy Perkins saga that took place at the Emmys in 2018. He genuinely showed up to the Emmys in 2018 in full getup, and a lot of people thought at first it was Donald Glover, but then in this picture you literally see Donald Glover right next to him. It's not Donald Glover, so a lot of people were speculating, who is this person? So I can definitely do a conspiracy theory video on that. Some people have genuinely speculated that it's Michael Jackson and he's still alive because there's a clip where the person dressed as Teddy Perkins says, "I'm alive," but in my opinion, it's just referring to the fact that Teddy Perkins obviously passed in the series, but now he's joking saying, "I'm alive." But some people think it has a deeper meaning. So if you're interested in that, I can definitely do a conspiracy theory video on that situation. But anyway, let's go ahead and close out this video. Anyway, that is all that I have for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next conspiracy theory video.